Well, you brought up Dan Lanning, so I'll go to my
Okay.
next one here. Would you rather have Dan Lanning or Steve Sarkisian?
Ooh, tough call. That one's an interesting one because Dan Lanning's one of those up and coming new coaches. Heavy Georgia connections, which was major. Heck of a, I mean, really knows his defense clearly, and has put good people around him. Sarkeesian's fascinating because he's really rebuilt his career in a positive light. I want to give him a lot of credit. After the disaster at USC and, heavy alcoholism, I kind of thought I didn't see it again. I thought Texas was crazy for hiring him. I thought it was kind of a last ditch effort in some ways at the time. But he's rebuilt himself, and now he's kind of a QB whisperer. They earned their spot in the college football playoff last year.
Without a doubt.
I can never take Texas, though. Give me Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning, I love his up and coming style. I love that he stayed at Oregon. Oregon has so many resources,
Yeah.
Brandon. I don't know why coaches just willingly leave Oregon. I can't believe they have so much transition in just amount of coaches. Like the last coach I feel like that was really entrenched there was what? Chip Kelly that stayed
And
there
then
and
what
felt like
happened?
a
He
freaking
left for a better
monster.
job.
Yeah, and then
Like either
Philly
get
hates
fired or
him.
you leave for a better job. I mean, Oregon really beat the stepping stone allegations this year.
They did, and I'm happy they did. Like they could do some serious damage in the Big Ten. I really believe that. I don't know why.
I think so too.
With Lanning there, you have Phil Knights just happily writing checks from Nike's campus, like whatever you need, it's just done. So like, I'll take Dan Lanning, but that's a tough call because Sarkeesian. I hate Texas, but I'll give him credit where it's due. He has brought respectability back to that program.
If I'm going to talk you into Sark, I would probably make this pitch that everything that you said about Dan Lanning is also true about Sark, where he's on the up and up. He took this football program that was kind of sputtering out for a decade and got them almost to the national championship game. Um, but he hasn't really accomplished a whole lot out of that Big 12 championship game. And Dan Lanning, I don't even think has a Pac 12 championship game. But you feel like they're right there, where they're knocking on the doorstep
Yeah.
of truly breaking through. I would also instill there's got to be a crazy culture down there in Texas to have Arch Manning on that roster and like comfortably not play him
It's
whatsoever.
true. That's a great
Like
point.
that's an insane roster. I don't think that you hear a lot of like transfer bugaboos out of them. They're recruiting like they're recruiting the hell out of Texas. I mean, we were talking off air
Yeah.
about Duncanville. They're getting after them. And Keelan Russell, like quarterback I just told you about, they made a great push for him. They're getting after Texas. And he's got the longer runway where you've seen flashes from him before when he was at Washington. You saw the hype of if USC wants you to be their head football coach, that says something. All those years with Nick Saban,
Yeah.
that pedigree as well, they feel so eerily similar to me.
That's a good. I'll tell you what, Brandon. You make a strong point that Texas, these last couple of years, and they've always recruited Texas well, even like when they would underachieve badly for the last 15 years. Like they still like it felt like every year top 10 recruiting class in the state of Texas. Um, Tom Herman could really recruit, and he had
That was
championship
about it.
levels of hydration where he had his P chart ready to go for his players. But they didn't win, and Sarkeesian has under immense expectations. I think the big thing for Oregon and for Coach Lanning, he might have caught a major break with Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama because Washington
That's
was
a big one.
building itself into a nice little regional power in Seattle.
They were getting after it.
And they've got great facilities there. Seattle is one of the most beautiful towns in the United States. Beautiful campus. It really is a tremendous effort. And Oregon is too. But losing him, and we'll see what, Jed Fish, what he does at Washington. And he's a good coach too. I mean, what he did at Arizona
Yeah.
was really impressive. If they can find a way to win that regional powerhouse, and then USC and UCLA, let's say, underperform in the Big Ten, and I don't think that's impossible despite decent coaches historically. If they can recruit California at a rate that maybe not as high as Texas can recruit Texas, because that's their own in-state, but if they can recruit California, and Oregon usually can a little bit, they could be a power too, Brandon. And I do like the X's and O's style of Lanning. I feel like players really like playing for Dan Lanning. There's a reason during that Colorado game last year where he gives, what was the quote about social media that he's like,
They
what
play
was
for
it?
clicks, we play for wins.
That's it. And I mean, that locker room, I thought, if I heard that in
I
that
got
locker room,
after it.
holy buckets, would I be ready to run through 10 brick walls. So I can't, but I like your take on Sark, though. Like, I really do. I can respect it.
And it's interesting because to me, that they both at one point felt like they would be the perfect successor for Nick Saban. And I truly feel like if this Texas job, out of any of the jobs in the country, had come open and come knocking on Shark's door, he probably stays at Alabama. He's probably now the head coach of Alabama, and they're probably a little bit more excited than they are with Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah. And you're dead right. You hit the nail on the head. I think who makes the better adjustment to the new conference, Brandon? Texas Big 12 to
They're both
SEC.
going into new upgraded conferences. I mean, similarities are off the charts.
No, and that's why this one's actually a pretty interesting question, because there's just so many similarities. Trajectories feel like they're similar. I mean, both these teams, if they beat Washington last year, their seasons are completely different. Oregon lost to Washington twice, and Texas losing the national semifinal to Washington. Like, if both can just beat freaking Washington, one of those coaches might be a national championship coach for all we know. Michigan was a power, but still, I mean, both those teams were not bad. They were competitive. So that's a good question. We're going on opposite ends, Brandon, but we both have valid reasons for our takes.
Yeah, agreed.